Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What is your desire? Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Explosions and fire. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Are you prepared to ride? Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Let's ride. 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 Let us ride. Let us ride. Let us ride. Let's ride. Let's ride. Let's ride. Let's ride. Let's ride.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Innsbruck, Austria. Innsbruck directly translates to a bridge over the Inn, and our racers tonight will be trying to bridge the gap to the racers in front as we take on our 10.95 kilometre race, including 427 metres of climbing as we take on the Innsbruck KOM. Expect the race to last about 22 to 25 minutes for our A and B riders, around half an hour or more for our C and D racers. We may as well get it over and done with. Steve Pritchard, how was the end of your race on Tuesday?
Oh, hi, James Bailey. I mean, I'm not one, unlike certain other members of this commentary team that are male and not Becca or me, to harp on about past glories and how I may or may not have won cycling routes in the past. But for me, it had everything that one needs in the ideal Zwift finish. There was no consequence in the points. I think we were racing for at least 105th in the ride. A man from the northeast of England got very excited about some orange numbers. A lady from the southwest of England reported that she was able to log on to Zwift and some tech worked, and you and I had a race on bikes with some pixels. It was brilliant. It was bloody brilliant, and we all loved it. It was completely pointless, but what a great sprint finish. And let's talk of it no more.
Happily. So on to tonight's race. We have a shortened version of the 2018 UCI World Short Lap in Innsbruck. We will see about 3 kilometres of flat before a 7.5 kilometre climb, and the race will finish around about the KOM banner. Judging by the first race, it's about 100 metres after the KOM banner, so anyone that's racing, make sure you push through the line. But we are go, 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 escargot, even though we're not in France, but I'm going to keep on saying it anyway. Tonight, I am following Charlie Scott, who's a very solid sea rider. Looking forward to seeing how he gets on, but I'm going to pass over to our hill climbing specialist, Becca Kingdom. What would you do today?
I mean, there aren't really very many tactics when it comes to a hill climb, is it? It's just pick a pace you think you can do for 20 minutes and off you go. So, yeah, anyway, tonight I'm following Zoe McKay again, because once I had a volunteer for a Friday night, I never let them go until they literally stopped racing. Sorry, Ange, I wish you would come back. I miss you. Sue recently got promoted into B after her fantastic ride last week, although she says she's not looking forward to tonight very much because she's not a very big fan of giant hills on her Friday evening. How about you, Steve? Who are you following?
Well, following people every Friday night because I can't get enough attention from them sounds like how you used to approach clubbing, Becca, but I'm following Bill Regatz tonight. He's did the TTT yesterday with the Grizzly Bears, which was hard because of the cold, apparently. He's done several TTTs with the Coyotes, and he's hoping for a good day today. He's had a total knee replacement last year, but used to race a lot in the 80s and 90s. So new person for us to follow. Really excited to see how he does.
So Charlie has settled into a group. I think I can see that Ed Siver is with him. Trying to see if there's any other names I recognise, but don't appear to be. It's a little bit fractured back here. I think we're going to see a few of these guys group up together as we head towards the hill. Becca, how's Zoe getting on?
She's still in the front group at the moment, so she's doing absolutely fantastically. 3.2 watts kilo. There's also a lot of other herd riders that we might recognise in there, although their names have disappeared off the sidebar, which is super useful. Thank you, Zwift. Steve, where's your rider?
So Bill's in P49, just moved up now, so he's in a little group here, and stupid Zwift has decided to change views, so I can't really see what's going on because I was picking up my wine. But yeah, little blob here that Bill's formed nicely as we move in the sort of right-left switch here, sitting at 3.2 watts per kilogram. So obviously a bit of a powerful rider here, Bill. I can also see he's on the Trekker Monda, which I would recommend tonight. What bikes would you be riding, folks?
That's an excellent topic, and one I was hoping to bring up. It's definitely one for the hill climbing rigs.
Planned this, James, but
almost like we did, but we didn't. I will be going for the Tarmac Pro Millis and hoping it gets me up the hill very, very quickly. How about you, Becca?
Honestly, we all know I don't like American bikes, so I don't really want to ride a Specialized or a Trek up the hill. To be honest, I'm tempted to go for the Pink Tron and see if I can place in the top 5, even without the bike that everyone thinks they should choose. What about you, Steve?
Well, as everyone knows, I'm quite lazy and quite often don't have my shoes on about 90 seconds before the race starts. So it's quite likely that I end up not even wearing the herd kit because I had to wear the elite kit for the team time trial on Tuesday. I was on my pink on Thursday, but I was on my Pink Tron on Thursday, so it could be I do that again. However, I did do all of my Alpe d'Huez training for the climbers plan that Stu Barrington puts together on the Amonda, so I'm a big fan of that, hence why I'm enjoying the rider that I'm following tonight. Do love a trek. Let's be honest, it doesn't really make too much difference. It's 20 minutes of just going really, really hard, and bike choice is going to make a few seconds difference, so just pedal hard. If you're worried about your bike that much, worry less about the bike, pedal a little bit harder.
And just to quickly touch on the Pink Tron, Steve and Becker, you were both in the Quokkas team on Thursday, and I do believe all but one of you were on the Pink Tron, obviously suggesting it's the fastest bike for all terrains, even though we'll ignore the fact that the route was entirely flat. So I think obviously the person in your team on the Blue Tron didn't get the memo and clearly hasn't watched our extremely informative streams in the past. But surely, Becca, that's indicative that the Pink Tron is the best bike for all time.
See, had we won out of all the herd teams on the TTT, that would probably prove the science. Unfortunately, we came 4th and got beaten by the cheaters, the Sharks and other teams. So I'm not really sure.
At least 2 other teams, yes, as we came 4th.
So yes, other teams that I can't remember. I
think it's unfair to say to Chris that he chose the Blue Tron. I believe he was actually embarrassed, and his Tron turned a shade of blue because he prematurely ejaculated himself from the pen, thinking he had to go on 15 and not on 5. And if any of us are using a countdown for sexual-based events, I'd suggest we don't do that. Let's move back to some racing. I think your rider should be hitting the com now, James.
Yep, no, Charlie is just turning left towards the KOM start line. He's currently in 65th out of 103. He was with a little group. Ed Sievert's just behind him, about 3 seconds back. And there's a fairly chunky group just behind and a few solo riders just in front. So we're looking forward to seeing how he gets on. How's Bill doing? Has he made the turn towards the com?
Yeah, we're hitting the com now, and he's with Kay Hudson from the herd, who I'm going to call Carl. And as Diane Kingdom knows, that's probably not actually his first name, but I'm just going to make it up and consistently call him that forever.
And we're very glad that Diane, or Davina Kingdom, doesn't actually watch these streams as far as we know. But over to the younger Kingdom, Becca.
Zoe managed to hang on to the front group until the bottom of the climb, but unfortunately now she's been dropped, even though she's doing pretty much 4 watts a kilo and has been since the start. So she's now by herself, although there's a group coming up just behind her, and she's in 30th. So she's definitely putting out a lot of watts to start with on the bottom of the hill. We shall see whether she manages to carry them all the way up.
Excellent start, Zoe. Well done. The fact that she's getting dropped at 4 watts a kilo shows particularly how fast the pace is. And if we look at the earlier race, some crazy guy called Bishop out of OTR decided to do the entire thing at 5.1 watts per kilo and beat everyone by 1 minute and 30 seconds. But could have taken it a little bit easier. But obviously he was pushing really, really hard for a PR. So well done, Bishop. Well done, OTR. Charlie's doing a great job so far. He's hanging on in there around about 2.5 watts a kilo, which from what I can see is probably around FTP. He's definitely having a good go now. He's pushing high threes, trying to catch up to a few riders just in front. Steve, how's Bill getting on?
So he's just been dropped by, let's call him Carl. It's a really interesting one to talk about tactics on this climb, isn't it? I say that every week. I'm probably a bit of a tactics nerd. So what I think about Innsbruck, it's actually a fairly shallow climb, isn't it? We're not going to hit any of those massive reg gradients that we all hate to see. So for our stronger riders, and as we talk about that now, Bill's hitting 16 kilometers per hour. So that does mean that even at 2.4 watts per kilogram, which is what Bill is doing very steadily now, there is some draft effect available. So you're probably better off trying to work in a group in this climb, aren't you?
I would argue not. So as you said, yes, it is a relatively shallow climb, and there's certainly probably, I'd say, around about 70% that's around about 4 or 5%, but you do have quite a few segments that are sort of 10, 11, and when you go over those, you will definitely feel them. And Steve, evidently you've managed to forget the time that a very generally a very friendly Dutch woman was kicking you in the shins, going up various slightly steeper segments, if you could possibly recall those.
Yeah, so this was in the ZRL week where we did 3 laps of Innsbruck Ring with the kicker, and then I decided to go up here chasing Gavin from our team, Gavin Irons, up here, and thinking I made a good lead, marry a line on the orange Tron, which we know is the fastest possible Tron, but only if you're Dutch. Decided to chase me, and then as I was tiring towards the top of the hill, repeatedly kick me in my pixelated legs as much as she could. So I do think there is some benefit. So if Bill can find someone who is going ever so slightly faster than him and just try and hang on to their wheel, I think there will be some benefit in the draft. However, I mean, like I say, we're on a 7% section now. The speed he's doing is 12 kph. I think is it 11? Is it 12 where we lose the draft? So I think for our stronger riders, there may be some benefit in the draft on the shallower sections and then attacking on the steeper sections. But as you say, it's a 20-minute effort. It could be that an all-out TTT could help it. But James, if you remember back to the Epic Com where certain riders followed other riders up the top of the hill and then beat them in the sprint at the finish, there is a benefit to sitting on the draft on some climbs.
How have we gone from like you are the most modest person in the entire like history of men who are modest to celebrating your 2 sprint victories in the space of I don't know, 10 minutes?
Probably wine would be the answer to that question. James Becker, how's Zoe doing?
I think I have to agree with Steve here that, you want to be with people on this climb, because although you might not be getting a massive amount of draft as you would on the flat, you're still going to be getting some. Unfortunately, Zoe is still by herself. There's a group of 3 who have just overtaken her, who I was hoping she would just about be able to latch onto the back of, so that she would get a little bit of a draft and perhaps a little bit of a rest, but she hasn't managed to do so. But at the moment, coming up behind her is Nate Holmes, who still has his tag as Bowsering, although I don't think he can do very much Bowsering on this climb. What about you guys?
Well, we've just had an interesting comment on the YouTube channel, the people watching the live chat, Becca, from a certain Bowser Bikes. So I think this is Mike Bowser, who has actually changed his name to be named after Bowsering, who has said that if you find a similar paced rider, the draft does help, and the Cougars helped him a lot until he blew up. So this person, who appears to be related to Bowsering, has suggested that Bowsering, as in staying in the draft, is a good tactic tonight. So that could be the final word on that one.
I strongly suspect that in the next 24 hours, if you look on the Urban Dictionary and search for Bowsering, there will definitely be an entry. But just coming back to the race quickly on the most boring hill of all time, Charlie Scott is doing a great job. He's got, whose name is probably Carl Hudson, 2 seconds behind him. And Bill was fairly close not too long ago.
Yeah,
Steve.
he's only 5 or 6 places. So Carl is the top rider I can see on the really shit Zwift ranking system on the right hand side that doesn't really help you much because it's small and doesn't show you the riders you need to. But Carl is 6 places ahead, I believe, on that. So it looks like Bill is 7 places behind Charlie. We can see some riders up the road, and Bill has very handily tagged onto the back of ET, who I'm going to call Emily in this case, a Canadian lady who's riding very steadily at kind of a bit 2 and a bit watts per kilogram. So hopefully Bill can stay onto her wheel. He's just letting her drop off a bit, but a bit of an effort here, Bill. Come on, you can hold that wheel. Oh, I can see Emily's got out the saddle now and putting the watts down. So it could be that Bill can't hold that, but he looks like he's just riding up to her on this steady a bit. So it could be they form a mini blob and catch up to them. Becca, how's Zoe doing?
Yeah, unfortunately, she's still by herself. Her watts are sort of varying from about 2.5 to about 3.5, depending on the steepness. But she's got a very good, comfortable cadence, like 95-ish. So she's definitely spinning up this hill very, very well. Unfortunately, the group in front is 15 seconds behind, and Nate behind her is 7, and he's also by himself, or possibly with one other person. So it looks like she's got a bit of a lonely climb, unfortunately. What about you, James?
So Charlie has just been overtaken by Kailash, who, in the whole theme of the herd time trial teams, we're going to refer to as Koala, I think. And I think that should be our naming convention for all people who we don't know. But Koala is just being caught again by Charlie Scott. And we are on a 9% section, which is one of the steeper parts of this climb, and as mentioned earlier, it does spike up to about probably 10-11%, and you definitely feel those bits on this climb. But it's just going to flatten out a little bit now. We can see the road sort of stretching in front of us. We're now down to 7%, 6%, so that'll be a nice little bit of relief. One of the things about this climb is there isn't really that much to look at. There's grass, there's trees. There's nothing particularly exciting. There's nothing to break it up. It's not like the Alp where you have various different hairpins to try and help you work out how much further you have to go. We've got 5.4 kilometers to go, and that's pretty much all you really know until you get towards the top end of a section where you've got a few little flat bits to help you out. But Charlie's just being overtaken again by we think his name's Carl Hudson, who's just behind, and Koala has just overtaken as well as B. Bernier, who's from France, holding 3.2 watts a kilo. Let's call him Bear. But let's hand over to Steve to avoid me from making up any more animal names.
I'm really enjoying this new theme we've hit upon on our commentary. So we currently have Cheetah Williams ahead of Bill, who's sat at 2.7, so his watts are bouncing around a little bit. So he's not following the advice that we've given tonight, which is to find that time trial place. So he's just blowing past Cheetah Williams now. He's dropped off a bit. Oh, no, I think he's catching a wheel. And then behind him, we have Iguanas, who is a French rider. And that's pretty much all we can tell from the wonderful Zwift interface here. I can tell some whatever names people have put in and a flag. I wanted to talk a bit about Innsbruck as a course, though, James. It's one of those ones which I think actually it's one of the less ridden courses there. But I really enjoy Innsbruck as a course. It's got a little bit for everything. Obviously, we've got this climb tonight for the climbers, but I really enjoy the Innsbruck ring with the leg snapper as a kind of all-round punchy course. I think it's got that lovely sprint section. It's got that climb that's not really a climb. It's kind of a minute long for the really good riders, but if you're a really powerful sprinter, you can make it up there as well. It's quite a fun course to race on this, isn't it?
Yeah, and we have the bullseye race on Wednesdays, and we occasionally have 4 laps of the Innsbruck ring on that. And I think generally people tend to agree that it is actually a really fun race course. As you mentioned, it's around about 9-10 kilometers, largely flat. A couple of like mini ramps, and then you've got your 1 minute climb up the leg snapper, which generally makes the race. But yeah, no, it is a largely unridden route. Generally, you wouldn't go there on a recovery ride, but Innsbruck Ring is definitely a fun course to race on, and I personally love summit finishes. So with this one finishing at 10.95 kilometers, I think it's going to be a very exciting race.
And speaking of now how you enjoy summit finishes, James, that's quite a change since you've moved into being more of a climber, isn't it? I think for me, the best bit about the Innsbruck course is the house that looks like a smiley face. Becca, how is Zoe doing there?
Compared to some of the climbs on Zwift, like Fen Top, this climb really isn't that boring though. I mean, at least there is something to look at, and it is over in 20 minutes, so unlike the 90 that it takes to go up on top.
There's no 1 kilometre at 12% as well, which is a straight line and dull.
That is also true, which makes it better than Fen Top, and it's also better than the Alf because it's, you know, over sooner. And, you know, maybe you could compare it to EpicCom, but EpicCom is probably slightly better. But anyway, Zoe is currently 35th. She's sort of been hovering around 3.2-ish, so she's just sort of like just at the lower level of B, which is what she's just moved into, but she's unfortunately still by herself. There's people 30 seconds behind, and there's people 30 seconds in front, and people 10 seconds behind, and she hasn't really seen anyone in quite a while, unfortunately. How's everyone else?
So just to quickly jump back onto the point you made about really boring hills. I would absolutely agree that Ventop is the most boring in all of Zwift, but also the most challenging. And then I think Innsbruck is definitely in second place with not really that much to sort of look at, and there aren't really that many landmarks. Whereas if you look at the Alp, you've got all the hairpins. You look at Petit Com, you've got your fairly steady section at the start before you go into the hairpins there as well, and then you can sort of gauge how you're doing based on that. And you've got the flat sections in the middle. EpicCom, you've got like changes in scenery. You go through the castle. You've got the bridge that never ends. But yeah, I just think that Innsbruck and Vontu are just really, really, really dull, and it's just a massive slog, and there doesn't really seem to be that much to keep you going. However, Charlie Scott is doing really, really well. He's picked up 4 positions in the last sort of 5-10 minutes, and he is coming up to P. Wu, who let's call him Panther Wu, who's flying an American flag, but Charlie looks like he's going to be overtaking him in the next sort of 5-10 seconds or so. Steve, what's going on?
Well, it looks like exciting, James, and I didn't want to interrupt that riveting chat you had about boring hills, but it looks like Bill has had a dropout, sadly. So we've moved away from his coverage. I'm going to jump right to the front of the race to Dan Pedrosa, who's currently in second place, chasing an ATP rider up the top of the hill, sporting a wonderful afro. So I'm really sorry to Bill. It looks like the commentator's curse of us following people on Zwift has struck tonight. So sorry to hear that, Bill. He was doing a strong effort, actually. He was steadily time trialing up away there, but I'll jump to following Dan now. On our point of boring hills, I think that from my point of view, Zwift needs more of this length of climb. I think the Petit Com, it's a 7 to 10 minute climb, really, isn't it? 6 minutes for people like Becca, who frankly are just bonkers.
5.
But it's one of those shorter climbs. I think the difficulty is it's a bit like EpicCom as well. It's a 20-minute climb. So and also, as we said, Innsbruck is a less raced world in Zwift. So it's more. I think it's more difficult for people to get to know the climbs, but it is definitely something that we need a bit more of on Zwift, isn't it? I think these 20-minute climbs are great fun and good for the climbers. I think the shorter climbs do suit the punchy riders a bit too much, so it's nice to see some of these longer climbs going on here. But,
I'm totally with you on the whole like 20-minute climbs, but I just think they could be a little bit more interesting. EpicCom, I think, is quite an interesting climb with various sort of peaks and troughs, a bit more scenery. You get into the snow line. Innsbruck
is say, like EpicCom is interesting, but there's no way you go from like ground level to the snow line and like the trees dying off in the height of the EpicCom. So it's completely unrealistic. At least Innsbruck, you know, this mountain's in the background with snow and stuff on, but this is realistic. You know, this is a proper climb.
Yep, fully agreed. Just to come back to Steve's point, yes, we need more 20-minute climbs. Not
So
not
how
everyone.
are our riders doing that we apparently follow tonight? Or, I mean, in fact, Craig, just stop the stream now. Let's just chat hills. But anyway, how are your riders doing?
So Charlie's doing okay. He is hovering mid to high twos, which is around, if not slightly higher than what his FTP is, and he could well have an FTP bump at the end of this. He's currently on one of those nasty sections I mentioned earlier, where it's holding around about 11%. We have a Wood earlier, a Wood just in front, and I'm struggling to think of an animal name right now, but I'm sure it'll come to me.
Anaconda.
Anaconda will do just fine. Anaconda Wood is 8 seconds in front, doing 2.9, with Charlie doing 3.4 at the moment. So got Anaconda just in front, and hopefully Charlie will make some ground on there. Becca, how's Zoe doing?
Just saying, if Anaconda Wood is perhaps Anna Wood from Herd, that was actually a pretty good name there from Steve. Yeah, Zoe has actually got a rider with her at the moment whose, for some reason, his name is Team Bjorn. So I'm not going to come up with something like that because you can't think of an animal name with the number 1 at the beginning of it. So yeah, she now has a friend. So hopefully she'll be able to stick on his wheel and get a little bit of draft and perhaps a little bit of a rest so that she can carry on pushing at the watts. But she's currently in 36th place. She's doing really, really well because looking on the Zwift thing sideboard, Chris G is only 3 places in front of her. Paul Shuckero is also named there, along with a couple of riders from OTR who we know are genuinely very good as a team. So she's, still doing really, really well. I don't know whether she's tiring slightly because her watts have been trending a little bit downwards, and I know she's not really a big fan of the climb, but we will see how she goes later on. How about you, Steve?
Just to jump in, Becca, I've got a very useful piece of trivia for you. That Bjorn is actually Norwegian for bear.
Well, that's amazing. His name is now Bear.
One bear.
One bear team Bear. So I've watched Dan Pedrosa across the line in a frankly frightening 17 minutes 54.4 over the com. He took second place. I've now switched to Nate Holmes, so completely confusing anyone who's watching the stream. I'm talking about someone you can't see. Nate is in a group of 3, 14 seconds down the road from Zoe and one Team Bear. So could be an interesting finish we get here. James, where are we looking at with your rider?
So just to point out that Dan Pedrosa came second behind P. Schaefer, whose first name I do know, but I'm going to call him Python. And also we've got A. Cooper out of BRT, who's fondly remembered by Becca, but he was a good 45 seconds back. And also another name begins with A, so we'll refer to Steve for some excellent ideas. But Charlie is still 8 seconds behind Anaconda Wood, who's now holding about high 2s, low 3s. But Charlie is hanging on in there, doing a great job so far, Charlie. You've got I just can't keep up the animal names. I'm really sorry. We've got G. Hancock just behind, 5 meters behind, 6 meters, and Charlie's pulling away. Thanks. So we've got the Giraffe Hancock, who's now 15 meters behind, and Charlie's pulling away. Becca, how's Zoe getting on?
Unfortunately, her one Team Bear rider has abandoned her somewhat and disappeared off. She did put out a good few for watts kilo efforts for a little bit as it ramped up, but she's gone back down now to 2.8. I'm thinking she's probably counting down the kilometres, or I guess it would be hundreds of kilometres now rather than that, because she's on 9.6. So
Becca, I'm glad to see you're back on your de-essing form with talking about hundreds of kilometres there. Definitely counting it down. And we can see Nathan Home I can see Nathan Home. None of you can see him. He's just done a bit of a punch there, looking to get Zoe in sight as he chases Panther McDowell and Bison Lundberg in this little group here up to Zoe Mackay.
I have excellent news. We can now see Nathan Home live on the YouTube stream. It's amazing. And also, we have another A just in front of Charlie Scott, who we're going to refer to as the Aardvark.
Well done. I was going with the Daily Penguin myself, but Aardvark probably is easier to say.
We are starting to run out of A's. We've got Anaconda and Aardvark just in front of Charlie. And we've also got someone from a herd of Roadrunners, but their name is too long to see. But I think it's the Koala. So we've got Koala 8 seconds away. We've got Anaconda 7 seconds away. And we've got the Aardvark 6 seconds away. Charlie is chasing them. Let's go, Charlie. Let's go, Becca.
Yeah, Zoe's still riding by herself, unfortunately. I mean, the Nate Home group is 5 seconds behind, so she might get a bit of a tow from them, as they probably will catch up, unfortunately. But can we just talk about the ridiculous time that Dan Pedrosa and Schaefer have posted up this com of 17:34 and 17:45? Because, quite frankly, if we have to do that tomorrow, that is ridiculous.
I think we could say that Python Schaefer has in fact slithered up there in 70 minutes and 34 seconds, hasn't he? And that is ridiculous.
If we carry on with these animal puns, I'm going to leave.
Audible eye roll.
This is getting genuinely exciting at the front, though, isn't it, Becca? So Zoe is 5 seconds ahead of the Nate Home group. I can see, and Nate sat there at 3.6, which is pretty decent for a guy who's newly promoted to Bs, but they are on a flatter part. Becca, how are you playing this as Zoe? Do you sit up and wait for this group and hope to bounce at them a bit and maybe do them a sprint, or are you just putting everything to the legs? Have you cracked? What's going on in your mind here?
I would be putting everything down, but I think she might be waiting for them, unfortunately. I mean, she's got, 600 meters or 600 kilometers in my wonderful DS thing. So she hasn't got that much further to go, but I don't know whether she's got the legs to hold them off, because they do have 3 of them and she is by herself. So
looks like Nate's attacked. I mean, he's now to the back. I'm a bit late my concept. Looks like Nate is attacking. Looks like they've seen the opportunity to bridge up to Zoe and maybe go there. But I can see Zoe's dropping some watts. Becca, talk us through her finish.
Oh, she shot up to 4. I don't know whether she can hear us. I hope she can. If she can, go. Put everything down. She can see. You can literally see the combainer now. I can see the combainer.
Yeah, I can see it.
On my terrible screen
as well. Nate's at the back of the group. I'm going to call it now. I'm confident. I don't think Zoe's being caught here, Becca.
No, she's got 7 seconds now, so she's made 3 seconds up on them since I last looked at that. So, yeah, I think she's going to be okay, depending on how far James has put the banner over the com banner. So
massive power from Zoe.
Yeah,
huge.
She's putting a brilliant effort here. Go on, Zoe. This is absolutely fantastic. This brilliant ride. 3.9 as she comes across the line.
That's great.
I don't know where the finishes, but she did fantastically. That was a brilliant climb from Zoe.
Looks like Nate's expended all his energy trying to keep with this group, so he's finishing just behind Python, McDonald and Bison Longbow. But James, where's your rider?
So Charlie is just overtaken the Aardvark, and the Aardvark has just pushed back. And I'd also like just to clarify that A. Cooper is now known as the Armadillo, a bit like the Dime Bar advert, soft on the outside, crispy on the inside. But Charlie has also now re-overtaken the Aardvark, and he's after the Anaconda, who's 11 seconds in front. So Charlie is still pushing on. The Aardvark behind doesn't know what to do. He's pushing down 2.3, but it was 3.3 just before. It's only 5 meters behind. Charlie has now 1.4 kilometers to go. We're just over the half an hour mark, and he's pushing on. Not too far to go, Charlie. And you guys have... Your riders have both finished, so I'm going to have to talk for another 5 minutes. I don't know what about.
Okay, James. I've swapped on my view of Zwift, which is not your. Well, it obviously is your view of Zwift, but it's not all of our viewers' views of Zwift. Here to Charlie, so you can see he's on the Scott bike with the Zwift 454 wheels, hitting this 10% section. He's got the Anaconda behind him and the Aardvark in front of him. I'm not even sure what our naming conventions are anymore. Looks like the Anaconda behind him is struggling a bit, trying to hold his wheel.
Anaconda in front, Aardvark's behind.
I've genuinely lost the plot with all these animal names, but it looks like Charlie is breaking the string between him. The herd has been split. He's dropped his pack. I can't think of any more animal puns at this point. Becca, how are you calling this? What do you think Charlie's doing? It looks like he's able to catch up the herd rider in front of him. Do you think? Partly,
idea.
but they are on a blue song, which we know is slower.
I literally can't see any of this. My Zwift has decided that it doesn't want to show me anybody other than people going down the hill. So over to you guys.
The aardvark has been dropped by 25 seconds, and Charlie, whose name we're not going to turn into an animal, maybe we'll call him a cheater, without actually being a cheater, because we don't like to call people cheaters. He's chasing the anaconda in front. The gap is now only 3 seconds, and he's got the koala just in front of the anaconda. Who knows what's going to happen? We've got less than a kilometre to go. The gap is only 3 seconds. The aardvark is now 6 seconds back, and we don't know how far that is in meters because it's so far. We've got 900 meters to go, and Charlie, the cheater who isn't a cheater, is chasing the anaconda, who's chasing the koala, and the anaconda's doing 3.4 watts per kilo. The koala's doing 2.9. Places could swap. We do not know, but it's definitely flattening out at the moment. We've got 800 meters to go. We're at 406 meters climbing, and I think we've got about another 20 to go. We're at 32 and a half minutes. I'm going to run out of breath really, really soon, and I may have a bit of a coronary, but we're doing okay so far.
I think it's good, James. I can see him pushing up his watts here. I mean, I know you can't see the watts. I'm surprised you can actually see the riders as you commentate, but it looks like their watts are pumping up. Charlie, his watts are a little bit lower than the anaconda and the aardvark and many other animals whose name are A that are in front of me. It's the koala. The koala, in fact, is behind him. Has he got a power up? Has he got a power up, James? That's what I want to know.
I can't see that, but I really, really hope he's got an aero because he's going to need it. He's holding 2.8 watts per kilo, but the koala in front's bouncing between about 2.7 and 3.4. We're just seeing the banner just in front. I think it's going to be too little, too late. Charlie's pushing up to the freeze. He's using a feather on the flattest part of the course, chasing the koala and the anaconda. But I think the gap's going to be just a little bit too much. We've got 300 meters to the banner, which probably means 400 meters to the actual finish line. Charlie is chasing the koala and the anaconda. They are now 6 seconds in front, and the koala's dropped down to 1.4, now up to 3.3. We're down to 200 meters to the banner. Currently in 57th place. He's made up 8 places on the hill, which is an enormous effort. We're just coming up to the banner in the next sort of 50 meters or so. Looks like Charlie is going to finish in 57th place. Oh, sorry, 100 meters to go. Now we've got about 50. Here's the banner. We're just going to go under in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 now, and he's going to have about 100 meters to go, and he will finish very safely in 57th place. Fantastic job, Charlie, and fantastic job to all of our riders. Massive thank you to Becca and Steve, as always, for providing the entertaining commentary. And as one of our YouTube commentators has mentioned, we've still got 100 kilometers to go.
Yeah, that was me.
Yes,
as we passed the vomiting statue of water, it was a great race to watch tonight, wasn't it, James? And I'm glad to see that Charlie didn't follow our advice from Twitter earlier, which is to use his feather on the downhill section, but instead used it on the flattest section of the course. So glad to see people also checking out the Facebook page. Perhaps tell us a bit more about that, James.
Yep, so we obviously have the Herd Racing League Facebook group, and as anyone that's listening will know, we have a YouTube channel as well. But just quickly switching on to next week, even though we've still got another five races of this route to go over the next couple of days. On Monday, we have our Stampede, which is our individual time trial route, which will have no draft, open bike selection. Ironically, it's a single lap of a whole lot of lava because we haven't done that enough just yet. And then we move on to Wednesday, which is Bullseye, which is our Wednesday points race, where points are scored for each lap depending on where you are in the field. And we'll have 6 laps of Classic in London before we move on to next weekend, and we have a single lap of Roulemapole, which is Roulemapole, which is basically the Flats of France, followed by the Petitcon backwards. So something to look forward to with a summit finish. So again, massive thank you to Becca and Steve, and an enormous thank you for Craig providing all these pictures tonight. Big thank you to our racers, and a massive thank you for everyone that's been watching. Thank you very much, and good night.